There's this story that talks about how in the buffalo herd. Um, it's a old. This is a really old story. You're not going to find this story in too many places because it doesn't fit um, what the Catholics and Christian priests. It doesn't fit what they had in mind concerning what we should believe. In the beginning of the reservation, something happened where we were denied healthy foods, we were denied our language, we were denied our spirituality, our culture, and as a result, we became weak-minded. And the priests learned our ways, and they said that most of our ways are conflict with the Bible, so that means they come from the devil, including our language. And so they changed. They just it's like they there's like imagine a big painting, 10 feet by 10 feet, yeah, and which would be about 4 meters maybe, 3.5 to 4 meters by 3.5 to 4 meters. Just imagine a painting that big. Let's say that represents the Lakota ways. And what happened when the priests came to the reservation, they found us weak-minded because of the things that we were deprived of. In the reservation, we couldn't leave at that time. It was like a prison camp. So what the priests did was they took this big painting and they cut off the four corners of that painting, and the rest they burnt it up. And the four corners, they put it together and drew their own image on there of what they felt the Indian way should be. Then they taped those together. And see, by this time, we're very weak-minded. And so the priests give us this small piece of paper and say, this is your Indian way. So it's missing most of the information. And now it's a tiny piece, and that tiny piece is dualistic. It has good versus evil in it. And the original painting did not have that. That's an analogy of what happened. Okay? So in that missing piece, that piece they cut out and burnt, there's just very few of us who know what's in there. And so these stories, there are stories from that missing piece that don't fit this little tiny piece of paper. Because remember, that little tiny piece of paper, that was created by the Christians and Catholics. They put their image on there, which is duality. So there are stories that talk about, old stories that talk about monsters that walked on the earth, that flew through the sky, beings that live in the trees, beings that live in the water, and beings that live in the sky, in the ozone layer. And it talks about microorganisms and things like that, and how there was one continent on the earth at the beginning, and what used to be east and west today is now north and south. The priests don't want to know that. They tore that information out because, see, that conflicts with the Bible. So they tore that out, and they didn't want us to know. They said that comes from the devil. That knowledge comes from the devil. So this is why today, 100 years later, most Indians don't know those stories. And when you hear them, the tendency is to say, "Oh, that can't be real. That doesn't fit." Doesn't fit what? The Catholic Christian idea that was forced down our throats when our great-grandparents were weak-minded. They accepted it because they were weak-minded. Yeah? So that's why sometimes I'll tell stories on here that a lot of Lakota people will not believe it. They won't accept it because it doesn't fit their preconceived notions that were formed by Christian dualistic brainwashing that happened in the beginning of the reservation. Yeah? So this story I'm going to tell comes from that missing information that most people don't know. Well, one time we saw a buffalo herd that was really acting weird. So the warriors went and they were watching this buffalo herd. They're like, what's going on? They watched it and they realized there's one among them that was terrorizing the others, and this was a big one. It's like almost monstrous. Yeah, it was probably one of the biggest buffalo they ever seen in their life. It was huge. It was a bull. And he was just, really attacking all the males into submission. And he was forcing the females to have sex with him. Anyone he wanted. And so the people were watching this and they're like, damn, this is weird. This is not right, because there's a one leader. Yeah, there's a one leader concept, and that's not the way buffalo herds organize. So they knew something was wrong. So they watched this, and then they saw that some of the buffalo the males were doing. They seemed to be taking instruction from this old guy, but they could tell they were scared. Because if you didn't do what he said, they saw this buffalo kill young buffalo bulls because they weren't doing what he wanted. They saw this. So they thought, gee, this is really a bad thing. Yeah? This is not right. And so they saw a buffalo cow and its young son, her baby, yeah, and a buffalo calf, and they saw that it was trying to hide. It didn't want to be raped by the bull, yeah, and so they were kind of keeping an eye on that female buffalo. And here they were talking with a holy person about this, and he was there with them. And he saw that. So the holy person said, watch, make sure nothing happens. He said, I'm going to go talk to that cow, he said. So, because the holy people can do that. They can talk with animals. They can talk with plants. They know this sacred language. Yeah. So he went over to this cow, and she wasn't scared. So he was standing there. You could see them in the distance, and he was saying things, and this cow was nodding her head up and down, and its mouth was moving, and stuff like that. So they had a long discussion, and then this holy man came back, and he said, this cow, this lady, this buffalo lady told me what's going on. He said, the leader, he just made himself a leader. And he started attacking everybody. He's so huge and so powerful that people are scared of him. And he asked her, he said, how come you guys just don't surround him and kill him? And she said they tried to, but he was so fast and so vicious that he killed a whole bunch of them, and they got scared and backed away. She said it almost seems like he's crazy, but he has no mind. The people are really scared. And the holy person said to the buffalo lady, he said, okay, I have a plan. He said, nearby there's a valley, but it has no exit. The only exit is the way you go in. He said, I have a plan. He said, why don't you lure him in there? We're gonna we're gonna be on the hills around it, he said. But when you lure him in there, go in there and pretend, that you're interested in him, and get him to come in there. And as you're getting ready, to mate, make sure that you're facing the entrance. Yeah, and before he does anything, I'll make a sound. You run as fast as you can out of there, and we're gonna kill him. So she's like, oh, geez, are you sure? He said, yeah, don't worry, we're gonna save you, your people. So she said, okay. So the holy man said to her, don't tell anybody, because he might hear. If you say to anybody about the plan, they might hear. And he told that little boy, please don't say anything. And the little boy said, no, I won't say anything. The buffalo boy, he said, don't worry, I'm not going to say anything. So they made that agreement. So the holy man said, okay, so now we have to go. Let's go to that ravine. We're going to go wait for them. We need to go now. We have to get there before they do. So they all ran, yeah, and on the sides. They ran to this area, and they all got behind the hills, and they were waiting. And sure enough, this lady was she was acting like she was in heat, like she wanted to have sex, and so she was luring him. She lured him in there, and he was trying to mount her, but she would go a little bit further to make him go further into that area. And so finally, she got him in there, and then she kind of slowly edged, so that she was facing the entrance. And then the holy man made his sound. She ran right away, and before he could run, all these warriors, these Lakota guys, they shot in at once. Yeah, they shot in at once. So all their arrows and spears pierced him, and he still tried to run. Yeah, so they got in front of him and they started, clubbing him, and some of the warriors got on top of him and they were stabbing him with their stone knives over and over, and this thing just wouldn't go down. And they were like, shit, there's something wrong with this buffalo. And they said, and the man was shouting, don't stop, keep going. And finally, this buffalo lady was running for her life, and she just was barely getting away from him. Yeah, and finally he fell to the ground. Finally. And the dusk settled, and they cleared, and they cut him open. Yeah, they cut him open right away because they wanted to make sure he was dead. And they noticed that as they were cutting him, no blood came out. Boy, they were confused. They cut him open from the stomach, the guts. There was nothing in there. There wasn't even intestines in there. There was nothing in there. Absolutely nothing. It was empty. Yeah? They cut open his brain. They smashed the skull, and they looked inside the skull. There's no brain. There's no organs. Nothing. They were really confused. How could this thing live? Yeah? So then the holy person said, this buffalo became sick in anger. And look at what happened. It ate everything up inside of him. And he acted this way. Totally crazy. And that the only way he could be stopped was to kill him. There's no way you could change this. He was too far gone. His addiction was too far gone. There's no way you could save him. He went over the deep end. He went extreme. And so they burned it. Yeah, they right away they burned it, and this holy person, he where they burned it, he neutralized that area so there wouldn't be any unhealthy energy left from this crazy buffalo. They call that Gnaskinyan. When you're so crazy that you don't even make sense, that you kill and kill, and in a dualistic world, you're downright evil. That cannot be allowed to live. And in fact, it's already dead because there's nothing on the inside. So they had to stop it by eliminating it. That's a really old story. And you can see why the priests don't want you to know about that. That's religion. It leaves you with an empty shell because it takes you away from yourself. Religion wants you to look at something else for salvation. It wants you to look at a man on a cross. It wants you to look at some kind of object for eternal whatever. It's taking you away from your sacred center. It's making you Gnaskinyan. If you go extreme in that, you become like that Gnaskinyan buffalo. Eventually, what you have inside of you erodes away until you're heartless. Yeah, you're soulless. You're mindless. And it's just an empty body running around causing all this trouble. And it's filled with hatred, anger. That's extremism. And religion plays a role in that. It's a bridge to that. Dualistic religion of good versus evil. This is what it does. That's what happened to that buffalo. It became dualistic to the point where it went mad. It became an extremist. And it killed anybody that did not agree with it. What does that sound like today? Isn't that interesting that we have a story on that? And yet this story is a story that the Catholic and Christian priests did not want us to know. And it was our own story. How dare they keep that away from us? But it happened. So we have a story that deals with extremism. Yeah? A story that deals with terrorism. You can look at it symbolically as well. That terrorists and anything that leads up to it takes you away from yourself. It takes you away from your sacred center, so you have nothing inside of you. Because you're looking out there. So you didn't take care of the universe inside of you, so it eroded away. Then you went mad. You went nuts. And you see nothing wrong. At that point, you see nothing wrong with killing anybody who disagrees with you. That's what this buffalo was doing. That was an ISIS buffalo. It was an Al-Qaeda buffalo. It was a Catholic buffalo like during the Spanish Inquisition. That's what religion does. It leads you to become extreme. Because it takes you away from your sacred center. Focuses only on your skin color, your culture, your religion, but there's no focus on being human. And that's where you lose everything. That's an old story. Yeah? And this buffalo caused a lot of babies to die. Yeah, it caused a lot of buffalo babies to die. It caused a lot of buffalo women to become sex slaves to him. And then he would kill some of them. He had to be stopped. The only way to do it was to eliminate him. There was no reasoning once a person goes beyond that threshold.